Broadcasting
from the City of Angels, Los Angeles.
You're listening to the Sheena Metal Experience with your host, Sheena Metal, only on LA Talk Radio.
That's right. It's the Sheena Metal Experience right here in LA Talk Radio. For more info on the show, latalkradio.com, SheenaMetalExperience.com. Don't forget to email me and let me know what you think of the show. This is kind of like, I feel like, a show that fans have been waiting for. 2 years ago, on the suggestion of Scott Lowell, who's sitting across from me right now, we did a little 10-year anniversary of the first airing of the first episode of Queer as Folk, and it kind of just not only changed my radio life, but my world as well. So here we are again, 2 years later, talking about the fact that last year they all went to the first Queer as Folk convention. There's another one coming up in LA in the summer in June, and I am honored to say that I'm going to be moderating that, and so happy to have them all in the studio with me.
Yay, Sheena!
Please welcome, we are still waiting on the wonderful Gail Harold to get here. Please welcome to the Sheena Metal Experience, for the first time, Randy Harrison, who I'm so thrilled to have, and returning to the show, Scott Lowell, Robert Gant, Michelle Clunie, and Peter Paige. It is so wonderful to have you all here. Thank you all so much for being here, and let's do it, kids. This is fun.
Yay. Thanks for having us back, Sheena.
Hi, Sheena.
Hi, guys. How are you?
Good.
We sound like kindergarten.
Oh, God. We're at Miss Sheena's class.
Right, it's whenever you guys get together. You're such an unruly group of kids.
Well, and you had the jelly bean. That was really...
So I want to make sure in the first hour that, Randy, we talk a little bit to you because this is your first time on the show. But, Peter, also I know we only have you for a little while. So while we've got you, tell us a little bit about what it was like for you last summer for all of you to get together and for the first time go to a convention that was solely about Queer as Folk.
Well, it was crazy. It was super fun. I mean, it was super fun for all of us. We all went to Germany, and some people got to travel around a little bit before and after. And any time that we get to sort of carve out time from our lives, our busy, disparate lives, and spend time together is really good for us. You know, we were so fortunate to find each other, and we all have such a good time together that any time it's just 7, 8, 9, 10 of us in a room is usually a good gang for all. But to be in Cologne, Germany was really cool, and to have people come in from 29 countries around the world to celebrate the show that we did together, it was pretty great.
Did you know, Peter, I know we talked about this a little bit when you guys were here last time, but did you know right away that you guys were going to be a family that was going to last this many years later? Because I think one of the things that people love about the show, not only is it a beautifully written, beautifully acted, wonderfully directed and produced show, but also I think the energy of how much you all love each other kind of came through on that show, and certainly comes through when people follow you on Facebook and Twitter. And did you guys know right away that you were going to be a family forever?
I don't think you can know that right away, but pretty quickly, we were all plucked out of our lives in different parts of the States, and Taya's from Canada, but we all sort of plucked out of our lives and brought to Toronto in this kind of whirlwind, and we only had each other to rely on, and that turned out to be a really great thing because we were forced to kind of get to know each other and get intimate with each other right away. And the good news is everybody was sane, and everybody was kind, and everybody was thoughtful and committed to the project for the right reasons, and that's luck. To bring 9 actors together in Hollywood and have nobody be batshit crazy is a really extraordinary stroke of luck.
That's completely awesome.
Genius.
And entirely true.
Yeah.
Right.
It is true. Yeah.
Well, and not to have anybody really be the diva that's dragging everything down, because there's usually.
I didn't say there weren't any.
Well, okay.
Peter, I'm right.
Don't
I
get carried
can
away.
hear what you're saying, Peter. I'm right here.
Oh, this is awkward.
Yeah, it's going to be a strange couple of hours, kids. I can tell already. So, Peter, is it something that is important to you that you stay in touch not only with these wonderful actors that have become your friends, but also with the connection with this role that changed your career and your life?
Of course it is. I mean, like you said, these are my friends, and so they're and we went through something, the 9 of us, that I don't think anyone else will ever exactly understand. Lots of other actors have had series, and lots of other actors have had 5 seasons of something, but there's something unique about our particular experience, and so we have this this shared story, these shared stories that don't ever go away. And as far as the sort of, legacy of Queer as Folk and the fans, and I love the fact that the show is continuing to kind of have this ripple effect through time and around the planet. I mean, the big gay and lesbian website in China is called Queer as Folk.
It's wonderful.
Because it was a website developed to somebody subtitled all of our shows and put them up on this website because it was illegal to view it and no TV station was ever going to show it, and it turned into the major underground website for the Chinese gay and lesbian movement.
Wow.
And
I didn't know that.
I'm sorry, Peter?
That's just incredible to me. That's incredible. These silly stories about, naked waiters and the pink posse and lesbian affairs, like that it sort of created and manifested something so much bigger than that is huge. You can't ask for more than that.
Well, and it's true. In my life every day, and I always kind of preface this by saying that I work for a theater company where my artistic director is Gates McFadden, so I know all about the Trekkies and what that's like. Still, the Queer as Folk fans, I think, are even more dedicated and more loving, even than Star Trek fans, and I never thought I would say that, but I hear it all the time, and I work for the Harvey Milk Foundation, and whenever we're somewhere doing an event or something's happening, I hear about how this show impacted people's lives. I mean, it really is, like you said, Peter, there will never be another show where a group of actors will go through a groundbreaking thing like you all went through. I mean, that's amazing. And what a wonderful thing to be so proud of in your past. It must be a beautiful thing for all of you to know that you did such a beautiful thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
It certainly is.
So Peter, tell me a little bit about, I know you're on set right now, right, for your new show. Can you tell us about that at all? Because I know that people have been emailing me asking about it.
It's funny that you talk about sort of the first of its kind. I'm on set. Today's the first day of photography for the show that I created with my writing partner Bradley Bredeweg, called The Fosters, that Jennifer Lopez is producing for ABC Family.
Go Peter.
It stars Terry Polo and Sherry Som as lesbian moms raising a brood of 5 teenagers, 1 biological, 2 adopted, and 2 foster. And it's a really kind of beautiful traditional family show about a non-traditional family. And in its way, I keep referencing the thing I always said about Queer as Folk, which is they came for the queer and they stayed for the folk.
Right.
And I hope this show contributes the same thing to the sort of modern family movement, if you will, that Queer as Folk was able to do, more than a decade ago.
I think that's beautiful, Peter. And I hope that shows like yours and also like Queer as Folk are sort of redefining what people think of as family. Because family isn't always just a mom and a dad and biological children and this and that. We in the entertainment business know that we sort of put our tribe together, one person we love at a time. And family is not always so easily defined, but it's just as strong. And that, I think, was one of the best things about Queer as Folk, that you really saw how a family was put together. And those people were more a family than if they were all a brood of identical twins. There was really family love there. And I think that this country, especially because of our Puritan roots, it needs to really kind of get together with the idea of what family is and sort of come to the table. It's a new millennium.
I got to say, it seems to be changing at a speed that I never thought possible. 58% of the country is now in favor of same-sex marriage. Like, are you kidding me? When we did that story in Queer as Folk, people were like, I can't even really conceive of that.
Yeah, they weren't even talking about it. Yeah.
Right. Now, as this progresses, Peter, will you be directing any of the episodes? Because I know that I always stalk you a little bit with this, but you are one of the most brilliant directors that I know, and just amazing.
Bless you. Thank you, Sheena. That's lovely of you to say. I will, eventually. I'm not in this first batch, this first 10 that we're doing, but provided the show does all right and we get to come back and make some more, I will definitely do some directing. But right now I got my hands full writing and executive producing. So.
And that's a bit of a thing to have your hands full with.
And by the way, if Dan and Ron are listening anywhere, I'm sorry for every ounce of trouble I ever caused.
just wonderful, Peter. I know we have to let you go, so I'm going to let you go. But will you come back and see me again by yourself in the next couple of months, and we'll just talk about the show? I'd love that.
Of course I will. Maybe I'll bring somebody from the cast or something. We'll have a good time.
That would be wonderful.
Thank you so much, Sheena, and love to my QAF family. I miss all you
Love
guys.
you,
and we'll see
Peter.
guys
Love you,
soon,
Peter.
okay?
Congratulations.
See you soon.
Keep kicking
Go
butt.
get him, yay.
So fun. But I always say that, right, about Peter. And Michelle, you've been on the show so many times. We talked about Leaving Barstow.
Yeah.
And I think that is one of my favorite films.
Oh,
and
he's
I
a
think
phenomenal
it's so brilliant.
director.
And
Yeah.
your performance in that is
Wow.
as good as
Yeah.
any performance I've ever seen in anything.
Oh,
I mean,
well, I
really.
listened to Peter, and we work really well together. I love to be directed, and I'm moldable. I will just bend because I want to please.
Easy.
No, but I do, and
Yeah.
Peter and I love working
Take
with Peter
it
because
easy.
he brings an A game, and he's so passionate, and I'll work as hard as him, and he'll work as hard as me, and we're on the same page, and I love working with him. It's so much fun as a director and an actor, of course.
But probably for a director, you're the best kind of actor as well because
Bendable.
the kind of
I am
everybody loves bendable.
I am bendable.
But the kind of actor that will come as sort of a clean slate and say,
Yeah.
I'm going to become the character and we're going to work on it together.
I will, yeah.
I
Well,
think-
I mean, I was trained by Milton Katselas, and you just, I was taught that, you if you say, jump 10 feet, you just go. You just, I think that's the beauty of being an actor is you make a fool of yourself and you fly and you try things and you screw up and, and that's the vulnerability of an actor too, is you're right out there. But I love, that's the thrilling part, for me.
It's wonderful.
To surrender, yeah.
Randy, welcome to the show. I'm so glad you're here, and I missed you last time, and
Thank
I'm
you.
so excited to have you this time.
Yay.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So since this is your first time on the show, tell my listeners real quick a little bit about you. Where are you from in the world, and where were you at in your life when Queer as Folk happened?
Okay. I am in the Berkshires right now visiting friends, but I live in Brooklyn, New York. I've been there for like 13 years. I'm from originally New Hampshire, but went to high school in Georgia, so I have that sort of coast shift from the north to the south.
Nice.
And when Queer as Folk started, I had just graduated from theater school and had just moved. I'd gotten my equity card like the summer before doing regional theater, and I had just moved to New York and done a showcase for agents about 2 months before I auditioned for Queer as
Oh
Folk.
my God.
Wow.
And then moved to Toronto right away, yeah.
So how old were you, Randy?
22.
Oh,
I was
wow.
22 when it started.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was it difficult to have that much success that young?
It was disorienting in a way because it was great. It was an amazing job, and it was paid more than anything I ever thought I would have. But at the same time, I hadn't built a career yet. So it was one job that I had. So it was always felt like this sort of strange thing, like I still had a lot to prove. I never really felt secure. Like if I got a big job like that now, I would sort of know who I was as a performer and an artist and, on the spectrum of my career. And to suddenly have that was sort of terrifying in a way.
And did you think when you were in theater school and when you were younger that you were going to wind up being on television? Because you, I think, have been mostly a theater actor since Queer as Folk, a lot of theater.
Yeah.
Did you think that you would just
No.
wind up on Broadway, or did you think you'd wind up on TV?
No, I thought I would do like off-Broadway, Broadway, and regional theater. I didn't really think that much about television. I think I sort of was realizing that there might be opportunities for me in television when I was like about to leave theater school, but it wasn't a huge focus.
And was it is theater kind of where your heart is? I mean, is that why you choose to spend most of your time there?
I think it's almost more that I just feel much comfortable in it. But I love it all. I love different. I think the main reason I've been doing theater since the show ended is because it was such. Doing that show for 5 years, I was in front of a camera so much, and I needed to do something different mostly. But I miss television, and I loved working in front of a camera and doing that kind of work. It's completely different.
That's wonderful. So where were you at when the convention happened last year? Were you in New York and you went from there?
Yeah, in Cologne. Yeah, actually, I was in Paris a little bit beforehand with Michelle and Bobby.
Yeah.
And then we went
Nice.
to Cologne
The
together.
Paris party.
That was fun.
So let's talk a little bit
Yeah.
about that. What was that like? First of all, did any of you ever think when you were doing the show that someday you would be going to Europe to a convention solely about that show where all of the focus would
God,
be on
no.
you?
No.
No.
Never,
No.
never.
What would people dress up as to come to a Queer as Folk convention? There's no. They would have to dress down to come. No, it made no sense. A little relationship-based drama is not the kind of thing that usually garners that
it's usually
that kind
sci-fi
of,
or
horror.
fantastical.
Right, exactly. Fantasy, sure.
Yeah.
You need costumes.
It really speaks to the uniqueness of the whole thing. The fact that when this came about, it was there had never been anything like it. I mean, it was covering a demographic, a global demographic that was largely in hiding, had no voice. I mean, so it's really been an interesting thing. One of the things we noticed when we were over there is that a lot of the folks who were at the convention said that they had just found the show within the last 6 or 18 months.
Sure.
It was really startling.
It keeps being rediscovered, which is so fascinating. Like I think Peter said earlier, that it's being rediscovered by high school students. I keep getting high school students saying, "Oh, I just watched the show." So it's.
But also because globally things are becoming legal, and there's a whole unfolding that's kind of different depending on where you are in the world. So it was, it's just a really unique animal. But absolutely no idea that it makes sense, really.
Well, and it's interesting because our office manager today, Ronnie, she was saying before the show, she said, is it true you have, people from Queer as Folk in today? And I said, yeah. And, she sees people come in from True Blood and, Carol Channing come in and completely unfazed. And she said, I'm kind of a fan today because my friends and I watched that in Israel.
Oh, wow.
So isn't that amazing that a bunch of young girls sat around in Israel and fell in love with this show?
Yeah. It was very big in Israel. There's actually a cafe called Melon Lens that I read about, or someone wrote to me about, and it's in fact I've never been to Israel. I'm dying to go to Israel.
Right. There needs to be a convention in Israel.
Exactly.
When's there a con in Israel?
QueerCon
Scott
2014.
So how did the con happen last year,
Back
Scott?
to the Holy Land. The Cologne convention happened almost primarily because of an insane woman named Elke who contacted me on Facebook, and every now and then we've talked about this before, but every now and then you'll get somebody who on Facebook or somewhere sends you a little thing of like, we love the show and we'd like to have you come visit us, because they had a dream. They woke up that morning and they dreamt that we all came to their house and we had schnitzel with them or something, and wouldn't it be fun? And so it was one of those kind of things. And she said, I live in the gayest city in all of Germany, Cologne. We would love to have the Queer as Folk people here. And I thought, oh, that's cute, that's nice. And so I kind of, I threw out, some ridiculous thing like, well, here's what it would take to get us all over there. You'd have to do this, this, and this, and it probably would cost you this, this, and this. And she just kept saying,
yes.
Yeah, let me see what I can do. Let me see what I can do. Let me see what I can do as we went along. And so I went back to the gang, and I was like, I don't know if it's serious or not, but maybe
we're all
it
like,
is.
This isn't going to happen.
Yeah, and if it were, what would you guys think about this and this? And so they kept saying, well, yeah, maybe if we did it this way and this way and this way. And I would give her, these requests, and she'd say, let me see what I can do. And Elke is just a dynamo, and she'd never done this before, and I'd never done this before, and so there was a lot of back and forth, and it.
Yeah, and folks should know that Scott was instrumental. He was the instrumental force.
Yeah.
He was.
I was like the telephone operator. I mean,
you did it all.
It was mostly Elke, and it just happened, and through the will of the fans too, I think, and the fact that like Peter said, that because like Randy, you had done how many in Paris or the conventions?
Sorry about that.
How many had you done?
Oh yeah, Randy, you've done conventions not just for Queer as Folk, right? But you had done just kind of LGBTQ conventions in general.
I did 2 in Paris, and then I went to Israel too.
Wow.
Oh, so Randy's
that was a convention. That was very different.
Yeah,
Hmm?
but it's the driving force of these fans wanting to do this, and like Peter said, having people from 29 different countries come. I think because there had been these little small isolated ones that still gathered good crowds, because Randy Harrison was there, and I would go see that too.
and so would I. Sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Same here.
But and so I think that just
really.
Who wouldn't?
Let's be honest.
Let's be
Gotcha,
honest.
Sam.
Exactly.
Just cut to it.
It's Randy.
So, all that stuff just kind of made it happen and kept, and nothing seemed to deter that woman. I mean, she was going to make this thing happen, and and there was a lot of hiccups along the way, including kind of apropos for today right now at the moment, that Gail had to, because of getting a film project, had to back out at the last minute, and we just kept going and brought Harris Allen in, who was wonderful, and that was in some ways one of my favorite parts of the convention was getting to reunite with Harris, who played Hunter on the show. Who's a man now.
Unbelievable.
From the pictures, he was
like a little stud.
He's not just a man, he's a stud. He's an extraordinary man.
You know, it was so weird when I saw him. I was like,
that was like your son
I
growing
felt
up.
proud. I really did.
I know.
I felt like this parental pride.
I wasn't even a parent to my character. Wasn't his. But I know what you mean. I felt the same way. I looked at him with such pride.
He was a kid.
Yeah.
By the way, just a sidebar: the four that you have on the line, the four of us went on to Berlin after Cologne.
That's right.
Oh,
That's
fun.
Right.
Was that fun?
Yeah.
We had so much fun.
We all stayed in a
But
little
isn't that
bed
the
and
best
breakfast
thing,
in Berlin.
Robert, that you turned it into like a friend trip? Because I remember
Completely.
seeing pictures of you all different places on the way there.
Well, Michelle first puts out this
Well,
little
I
email.
put out this email and I said, "Hey, does anyone want to go to Paris with me before and Berlin after?"
Paris?
And then
Really?
people started jumping on board and saying, "Yeah, let's go." And I just remember after the convention, we were exhausted because it was nonstop.
Oh, I bet.
Nonstop, and it was a love fest. It was a beautiful.
But
love
it's a lot
fest.
of energy, right,
But
Michelle?
it's
A lot of
energy
people
coming
that
at
you
a lot of
touch and
energy
hug and
going
talk
out.
to,
Yeah.
and it's a lot of energy exchange every minute.
And so I remember on the train ride to Berlin, I think I fell asleep with my head first down on the table. Yeah.
You did.
Well, Scott was practicing. Scott was practicing the address of where we were staying, Pfeffendreisig.
35 Eberwalderstraße.
He practiced for 2 hours. It was
35.
so cute.
Now, is it an extra treat, Randy, for you? Because you live on the other coast, so you don't get to see these guys all the time. So it must have been fun to get to take a trip.
I see you sometimes, Randy.
Yeah, occasionally, but not as much as you guys see each other.
That's true.
No, that's true.
Yeah,
That's true.
No, it was great for us to get to see Randy and Sharon.
Right.
Sharon, yeah.
And Hal and Taya. I mean, a lot of us. And by the way, we must send out a happy birthday wish to Taya Gill, who
Happy
couldn't be here
birthday,
with us
Happy
today,
birthday,
but
Taya.
Happy birthday, Taya.
But yeah, I mean, it was really one. I mean, that all 8 of us. I mean, originally supposed to be 9 of us, but all 8 of the original gang, at least, that to be all together, it was amazing, and it was. I found it amazing. I don't know, you guys can talk to it too, but I thought it was funny how, in a very different way, how the old dynamics, for good and for bad sometimes, just
totally.
because it's family. I mean, it was like going to
It reminded me of when you're in your late 20s and you go back to the house you grew up at, and your parents are there, and you start acting like a 14-year-old again.
That's what I was going to say. It was like going back for Thanksgiving dinner with your family, and no matter how much you've grown and evolved, you instantly revert to all these old things. And they came out within the press
5
conference,
minutes, yeah.
Before the events even started at the press conference, I was just like, oh yeah,
Here
wow,
we go.
okay, here we go.
Yeah,
all the personality
Wow.
types.
Yeah.
And
It is a family with true family dynamics.
Yeah.
Scott's my brother. I mean, we have all this.
But
it's
which
a
by the
family.
way, I remember when we were leaving, I felt so much sadness at the idea that I was going to have to leave these people. I remember that last night we were all in the lobby, and I was just overwhelmed with the feeling of grief and sadness because.
I think there's a safety when we're all together.
There's really a feeling of
family,
real feeling of love and family that
you're
I
with
think
a lot of
will
people who
always
care
be there.
about you.
Sharon was very emotional about it. I mean, she was
so lovely.
over the moon.
She's
saying,
great. We were up till
lovely.
4 a.m. that night drinking downstairs in the lobby. Sharon's hysterical.
Well, I'll share a little
She's so
story about
funny.
her too, because that we finished, and we can talk more in detail later. The specifics of the convention, what it was like going through all that. But it was very emotional, and we were all exhausted, and people were going to be all going their separate way the next morning. So it was done, and we kind of wanted to have one maybe last kind of meal together. And some people had already gone off to their room to take naps and stuff. And I went down to the restaurant at the hotel, and it was kind of late-ish, to see if we could get a table for us all to eat at. Yeah. And I went down, and I was just drained. But I talked to the maitre d', and he's like, "I'm sorry, it's kind of late, and we can't really set up." It was going to be 15 people, and it's we can't really accommodate that for you now. And so I just kind of slumped down in a chair there, and people started coming down one by one, and it's like, "What's going on?" I was like, "I don't know, they can't get us a table." And Sharon comes downstairs and, "What's going on?"
By the way, I wish everyone could see the visual of Scott jumping.
Yeah, Scott just
the physicality
captured
of
Sharon in one gesture.
I said,
Scott does a great Sharon.
I said, I don't know, they don't. It's late, the kitchen's closed, so I don't know what we're going to eat. They don't want. She's like, "Hold on a second." She goes up to the maitre d', and she goes up and first she because she's so old school, and she pulls out a wad of cash in her pocket, and she goes up and she does the folded up money in the hand trick, and she goes up to the maitre d' and shakes his hand, like, these kids have been working their asses off.
That's so good.
Oh.
It's so true.
That's so
And all
good.
they want is a nice little meal together, and can't you accommodate? And she just turned on the dame juice, and she got us that table, and to a point where not only just got us a table, but they were loving us and adoring us, and they wanted us to all sign a program from the convention to hang back in the kitchen, and she's just, oh, thank you so much, and just the kindest, warmest, and tipping him some more, and so she took care of it for us. So God bless that Sharon Glass was there, or else we would have had.
Mama took care of it.
And how sweet that she all considers you kids, that you're her kids.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's kind of a nice thing.
Yeah. Well, you have kids in life, whether you have them or whether you adopt them or and adopt emotionally or whatever, you find your family.
Yeah. So I was looking at my phone to see if Gail had responded as to where he's at.
But can we just say
Gail's lost the valley.
It's going to be nice to have Gail at the convention.
Yes, that's going to be great
That'll
to have
be really
him.
exciting. That's going to be fun.
And he's excited to do it because he's done now a couple. What's good is he's done a couple kind of on his own now, which I know he's really, really enjoyed, and he's enjoyed meeting people. But I know from talking to him, he's going to be so glad to have us all around.
Oh, has he done cons before?
He did. Well, he did one
by himself.
He did one in Italy, but
sci-fi.
it was more a sci-fi convention
for Secret Circle.
For Secret Circle.
Mm-hmm.
But then he went to one in Spain just back in October that was like a Showtime convention. I didn't know Showtime got its own convention.
Who knew?
But he did some ShowCon or something over there. And again, he enjoyed himself greatly and really enjoyed meeting the fans. And he got some terrific gifts he was telling me about from some fans. And hopefully he'll get here and he can tell you more about it himself. But I think there was other people there that he didn't quite know, and I think he's someone who again he feels the comfort of having us all around. So I know he's really looking forward to that.
Can I do a shout out to I just want to do a nice little shout out to Joe, my friend Joe, who's in London right now, and it's probably 1:00 in the morning, and he's listening at 2:00 in the morning. Yeah, and he's listening, and I just want to say I love you, Joe, and I wish you could make it to the convention, and a big shout out with love and hugs and kisses from America. So.
Did you want to sing
Hi,
a song?
Joe.
Did you have a song you wanted to dedicate to Joe too?
Did you bring a little poetry or
someone to watch you?
The Lord Byron to read him?
Well, I'm excited you're going to be hosting. I had no idea that you were going to be hosting the upcoming or MCing.
I'm thrilled. Yeah, I can think of no place else that I would rather be, and I was so honored when they asked me.
And there couldn't be a better person.
Perfect.
Yeah. Couldn't be a better person.
No, I feel very safe. We had some wonderful MCs over there who were very enthusiastic.
Yep.
They were very funny, and they were very German. Although one was American living in Germany, but it really was like
they were making stuff up about our bios. It's like I was
okay.
in
They
Swan
made me
Lake
sound good. Well,
Really? And
congratulations.
they were making all this stuff
Well, maybe
up.
that translates to something else.
I think that was it. I really do. There was a certain amount of just kind of vamping. When maybe there was a little miss on the the translation.
Yeah,
factor.
it's interesting in translation.
Yeah.
It's like
Well, let's talk a little bit about that while we're talking about that. Randy, let me ask you first. Is it, when you did your first convention, is that something that is natural to you? I mean, I think that some actors are very, very shy, right? And sitting in front of people and sort of exposing yourself to answer any question is more terrifying than acting in front of people. So was it something you had to get used to?
Yeah, it was something I had to sort of prepare myself for emotionally. I know I'm more used to it now, so I know what to expect, and there's so much benefit from it. I mean, you get to meet so many great people, and so I'm much more comfortable with it now. But it's not something that comes, naturally to me.
Yeah, I was wondering how that was going to be for you, because I know you're not necessarily Mr. Big crowd kind of, but it was
amazing.
It was so natural.
Yeah.
You really handled it beautifully.
Do you think?
Thank you, because I've had some practice.
You have.
I mean, I like interviews. Like, I'm fine with answering questions. I actually like talking in depth about, my work and the experience of working on the show and things like that. So, and it's fun to be able to share that with people who are really interested in it.
Yeah.
I can get overwhelmed by crowds like that. That can be an issue sometimes. And if there are other people who have a lot more to say than me, I'm not going to be the one to exert a lot of effort to make my voice heard. But, if somebody asks me a specific question, I'm really happy to answer it and think about what they're asking.
And is it easier at something like Rise and Shine in Cologne, where you know everybody that was on stage with you? Is it to be in a group? Does that make it more comfortable for you?
Yes, of course.
But it is kind of a
I
strange
mean, we
thing.
go right back into our roles. We did so much of this,
Playing
we
off
did
each
so
other.
much promotion during the show,
Yeah.
so that
Oh, gosh.
that's one of the things that I was sort of referencing when I talked about going back to your parents' house and suddenly you're 14 again. It's like I'm right back into those roles of, how we handled answering questions with, there's those of us who are much better at talking and more articulate, and those of us who like to sit in the background. And, we went right back into those roles, which is oddly comforting.
Yeah.
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 It's interesting, isn't it?
It is.
So how are the rest of you about that? Michelle, how are you about just because really anybody can pop up out of the audience with a sweet little twinkle in their eye and ask anything on their mind. And it takes a special person to be ready to field that, right?
Well, I think it's interesting. I think when you're doing it all the time, and we used to do a lot of it. We used to do autograph signings and all sorts of promotion. And so I think when you find your groove, you're fine with it. But I think the first day I was a little bit like, oh gosh, yeah, that's what that was like. So it took me a while, and I found myself, I was really comfortable in, when there was 5 or 6 people and we were doing these luncheons or dinners and it was more intimate, I found that I was much more comfortable in that kind of setting. And it's always interesting, during the Q&A when I was with Robert and Peter and we were talking about bullying, I really kind of let them speak because they know more about the issue than I do. And then I try to, if I see, something that I can add, I do. But I find that unless I have something really to add, especially during those discussions, I might not be the one to really, jump in, So
and is that something that surprised you or not? It's an interesting point that you bring up, Michelle, that because...
It surprised me. It surprised me.
Because
I do want to
listening, Joe?
That's for Joe, baby.
No, but
it did surprise me, and I'll tell you why. I think that I became, I didn't really become an LGBT advocate until the Prop 8 thing happened back in 2008, I believe. And then something shifted inside me, and I went into full-on advocate mode. And it's been a journey for me being, I guess you could call me straight, whatever. For the most part, I identify as straight. And I think being a straight ally, a lot of times people will be like, well, why are you doing this? And I've had to take that journey for myself. And I always think to myself, I haven't met my future children or grandchildren yet, and so I could be fighting for them. And
sure.
And then I also think of the Martin Luther King quote where he says, "We're not free until we're all free." And my rights are tied up in your rights, and they're all linked together, and we rise and fall together. And so it's been a real journey to find my way into that, and then looking at women's rights and the rights that we still have to fight for.
And it's the same thing.
So
until there's global equality for all.
And so it's finding that ownership of
right.
advocacy within the group, and also never acting as though I know more about their lives than they do. Having a certain humbleness, which I think is nice. There's nothing wrong with that. I never want to feel like I'm someplace where I don't belong, and I always want to feel like I'm there to not only speak but to learn. And so it's interesting for me,
Well, and it's interesting that this show, whether you're gay or straight or somewhere in between, this show has given you all the responsibility of sort of carrying that legacy with you, that you kind of become an advocate because you were part of the show. And whether you feel like you want to be one or not, people look to you and expect that you're going to be because you did this groundbreaking television. So I would think that whether in your regular life you're part of the LGBTQ community or not, it's a lot of load to be suddenly put on you.
And just to clarify, I do feel like being an advocate all the time, and it's actually one of the most fulfilling parts of my life. I find it to be, I feel so sorry for people like whoever, say Rush, let's say, crazy guy, to not be part of moving this world forward and to stand arm in arm with your fellow man and fight for each other's rights. There's really no greater joy in the world, and I find it to be such an honor.
Yeah.
But you do have to make it authentic and find your way into that story, and it's one of the greatest journeys ever.
And Robert, you talked last time about how the show sort of influenced your life and made you much more of an advocate.
Oh yeah, without
through
question.
the course of the show. That
Yeah. No, without question. I mean, I think first of all, yes, we were all saddled with the this
Cross.
the imprimatur of gay, carrying the torch. I don't know what I'm trying to say, or
Sure,
I'm not able
but
to
you're
say.
right, yeah.
But I think it was also no accident that these were the folks who were drawn to these roles, and I think in a way it was almost a given that this particular group of people were going to have the wherewithal or the interest on some level to do that. Personally. Like I always had the fire and the desire for equality. Freedom has always been my favorite word, and I always fought with my own internal limitations on my own freedom and ability to express and be free in my life. And it was a terrifying thing in some ways to step into that role, because I was closeted as an actor and very afraid, and given my own particular background, and I remember sitting down with a publicist, and he had helped several others come do cover articles. He'd been responsible for Ann and Ellen's stuff and for Nathan Lane, their cover stories on the Advocate, and he unequivocally was like, yes, you should do this. And my manager had a very opposite take, so I was getting very
sure,
but in terms of the change, it was absolutely transforming. I through this journey, it started then and it's continued to today. Have stepped more and more into who I really am, and Queer Folk was an enormous part of that. It pulled back a lot of layers, and I really got to step into that freedom and to try to be a service to others. I mean, I've been saying to folks, it's one of the things that has been hard to replace. Is I love acting. I really do. I love expressing this way. But there is nothing like the convergence of doing what you love and changing the world.
Absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
incredible.
Absolutely.
So well said.
So true.
And it's like, I'm kind of going through this like midlife crisis where
Aren't we all?
I want to do that again. I want to be a part.
Join the club.
I want to be a part of
Yeah.
of creating change. I was able to do this film called Save Me with Chad Allen and Judith Light, and that was an extraordinary step in that direction. But this was just something so unique and powerful in that way. And,
and that was I think the danger we all kind of realized at the time too, that given that it was the first thing of note or this kind of breadth that we all had experienced, that there was a bit of feeling like, wow, where do you go from here when you start off, in terms of television at least, at the top and with an experience that
set the bar.
It has been tough because
high.
I know that my agent after Queer as Folk, she was pushing me to get on another series, and when I read the pilot for Queer as Folk, I got so excited. I was jumping. I was like, let me at that character. I was turned on and thrilled, and I don't mean sexually, of course. I mean turned on emotionally, and I was pumping on all cylinders, and I was like, this is exciting. This is so much fun, and it's so cool, and I was so excited about it, and to go through that experience and to open up communication in an area where there hasn't been any communication at all, and to have a global impact, and to have people from all over the world coming to you and sending letters. It was so extraordinary that then you get off that show and you read scripts, and it's like they're not that. There's not a lot of queer as folks out there, and so it's hard. It's hard to go on and find another TV show that's as exciting as that, and it's really challenging.
Randy,
I want to clarify one thing
please.
that I did say, because I said that I was terrified, and that was a mischaracterization. I've for a long time said that I know I'm in the right place when I'm both terrified and excited at the same time. And when I first saw the breakdown for this role, and it talked about being this English professor who was just as comfortable on the dance floor as he was in front of the classroom, and just all the things about this character, I was beyond excited. So it was just, again, that perfect convergence, I guess I just wanted to say. Is
Well, but I understand terrified. First of all, I think when people are listening, they don't realize that it's a young actor coming out now and 12 years ago. I mean, 12 years ago doesn't seem like a long time ago, but for Hollywood, that was a long time ago.
Oh, it's a totally
Not a
different
lot of people were
landscape.
coming out then.
Yeah.
Well, and again, thousands of actors turned down just to audition for the show. That people refused to audition. Entire agencies would not let their actors
I remember you
audition
saying
for
that when
this
you were here
show.
the
My
first time.
agent actually
Yeah.
told me not to.
Yes. So I
And
mean,
I said,
it
"You're
was still a
crazy.
scary
I'm
time,
going."
and Robert, when he came on the show, and his career to that point was playing these very studly, hunky,
Straight guys.
straight hetero leading man, and that's a lot to risk. He had this terrific career going.
It was very brave.
And when, if I may, I mean, when I recall having conversations with you about it, and he was so thoughtful about it and had a lot to weigh through to make this decision. It was not entered into lightly, but you could see once the decision was made, the peace that came over him was going to be a balm for anything that was going to come his way, and I thought he handled it exquisitely. The whole
Thanks,
thing,
Scott.
and I think we were all very proud, and because we'd all gone through a season of it, so we already drank the Kool-Aid,
Right.
and
Yeah,
Robert came
yeah.
into this, into the middle of this maelstrom, and it's something. It's like, Jack, we know, brother. I know you just can't stop yourself. It's what happens when you come on board the good ship Queer. You got to,
The love fest.
Yeah. And it could have gone so many different ways, and he remained very proud of how he handled all that, and he knows he did the right thing. So I don't need to say that, but it was not easy. That's a very difficult decision, especially at that time, in
Thanks,
2001.
Randy,
Oh,
what
yeah.
was it like for you?
What about me, Ma? What do you mean?
What was it like for you to do a show that was so controversial at the time?
I was excited. It was exciting. I knew that it was going to get a lot of attention. I knew that, for me, one of the things that was most exciting about it from the beginning was that there was going to be gay sexual content on television. It made doing things that, in theory, would be really difficult, like sex scenes, which became very difficult, easier because I thought they were so socially important.
Right, and what
At
was
that time.
Was there ever a time? I mean, did you have an agent or a manager at the time that said, "Look, I don't know if you really want to do these scenes because there's never been anything like this." This is a funny town, right? They're so terrified of anything that's never been done. But then once it's been
Right.
done,
That's
then
the
it
magic.
Try to
becomes, then
duplicate
it becomes
it.
the coolest thing, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
you're right,
yeah.
Michelle. Then it's how many times
Like,
can
hey,
we do the
the
same
L
thing?
word, hey.
But that was a big thing for you guys to do scenes like that, and I would imagine that not only the sociopolitical connotations of it, but just the graphic realness of it would have made a lot of managers and agents completely freak out and stop breathing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was a college student. I was coming from nowhere. I hadn't had years being indoctrinated into, the LA world and the business. I was like a no one coming from nowhere, and I had been out forever. I sort of came of age meeting Tony Kushner and Larry Kramer, and so naively, none of that occurred to me. I mean, I knew in theory what it meant, but it didn't have any real personal resonance for me. I was like, I'm excited to get out there and do this.
Randy, I
I could care less.
totally forgot that actually right before I came on the show, I remember I just saw one clip, and it was you and Gail kissing, and I got so damn excited that I was like, oh my God. It was just, all of a sudden, the little kid who had dreamed of being able to express that way in such a, I was over the moon. I forgot that moment and that reference of the two of you kissing.
And I have this kind of comic book, multi-framed comic book drawing thing in my mind of Randy, going from when I first saw him. But in my mind, he was off at the Muni in St. Louis, which is the biggest outdoor theater in the world, and it's so big that all the actors on stage have to do really grand gestures every time they speak, so people can tell who's talking on stage. That Randy was going from that. Next frame, he gets a phone call. He flies to L.A. I see him at the test there, just with his eyes as big as saucers. So cute, looking like he's 17-year-old, where Peter had to ask him, please tell me you're older than 18. And and going in and get this thing, and then the next frame is him and Gail, first day of shooting, doing one of the hottest sex scenes ever, and
right,
just
still to this day ever.
Yeah, and those 3 frames, that's how I imagine Randy's life was. I know it's not wholly accurate, but that's how I see it, and what a hell of a journey. But
people like to see it that way.
I know, but you guys did. You guys had to dive in pretty quickly before any of us did.
Oh yeah, like right away.
That wasn't the most tactful way to say dive in, but
you know what, Scott, if it fits. Do you think that, Randy, a lot of it too was that you, like you said, you didn't have all that Hollywood conditioning, and you came from the theater, and I think all of us know that in the theater there's so much more flexibility. Yeah. To do things, to be daring, to take chances, to break down social stereotypes. It's almost like it's taken films and television a while to catch up to it. Because I think theater people just think, okay, you want me to be naked on stage? Okay, you want me to do this? You want me to try that? All right. That's just kind of that theater ideology. So maybe because you came from that, Randy, it was so much easier just to think like, all right, I'll do this.
I think so. I think also because television was a bizarre fluke. I was like, this is so weird. I didn't feel like my career was I had no career at all then. But I didn't feel dependent on it. I thought, oh my God, I'm going to do this one crazy opportunity and then go back to doing what I've trained for and what I was preparing for. I mean, when Angels in America came out in 1991, I think, or 89, 91, and that sort of blew my mind open at that time. I was like, it was kind of right when I came out. And so, it was 8 years later that I was being asked to do sexual content on television. I didn't think that much of it. I should have, obviously.
I think maybe one of the things that I've come to terms with over time, and I had to find a lot of compassion for myself that it was as hard as it was just to be who I was, because I think I judged myself a lot for that. But the truth is, and I'm always very vocal about the fact that everyone gets to have their journey, because nobody knows what someone else went through. Some folks grew up with parents who were much more liberal, and some of us had parents who would have disowned them.
Sure, right.
And my mom was like, "Yeah, you're playing a lesbian. I love it." She's like, "Tell me you're a lesbian." I was like, "Mom, I'm not a lesbian. I'm sorry."
Oh, she's so Northwest.
She's so Republic of the Northwest.
It is amazing too. I have to say, given that it's 2013 and everything the show went through, I'm on the selection committee for the Young Playwrights Festival out here. So I've been reading nonstop plays by teenagers for the past 4 weeks. And it's I know, God bless me.
But they're so good.
But some of them are
really
amazing. But
yeah,
Sheena, we have to narrow 250 down to 12. So there's a lot in there that really aren't.
And I don't get any of them till we got the good 12.
Exactly.
So, right.
But I have been amazed by how many plays are still about gay teenagers hiding, and someone's going to tell their secret.
Yeah.
And so even with all the openness that we see now, and the turning tide towards an acceptance for gay marriage, there's still a lot of kids who are terrified about it. And again, why I think when someone goes into a dusty old video shop and finds a DVD of Queer as Folk on the shelf, and they take it home and watch it, that's why it's still having impact, because it's still there, and that feeling of needing to not feel alone and find acceptance in something, it's still there. So you're right, it's not easy for everybody.
I think the thing that was brilliant, one of the most brilliant things about Queer as Folk, was that it wasn't just the gay stories that the community tells itself all the time. It wasn't just HIV/AIDS, although it was included. It wasn't just the politicism, although that was included. It wasn't just the self-loathing gays, although you got that. It wasn't just the coming out story. It was also just regular gay life and friendship and people being people woven in between it, because when you live in this community, every day of your life is not a tragedy, somebody dies, this happens, that happens. It's just being a regular
Sometimes you're
person.
Just making coffee and trying to have a baby.
And hanging out with friends in a diner and deciding what you're going to eat. And it did a beautiful job of mixing things that we thought were traditionally gay from gay films. And just regular things from a regular story about regular people, so that it seemed regular. And I think that gave it so much more emphasis. I think so many projects, whether it's plays or films or television in the community,
They focus on the issue.
They're so gay
Yeah.
that
Right.
you don't get a break from
The day to day.
I mean, it's just
funny
like a
because-
melodrama that goes on and on.
It's
Yeah.
funny because I remember one of the first conversations. I probably told you this because we've talked so much
Right.
now.
Yeah, Michelle's here every other day.
I'm going to be 80 telling the same story, but I love the story because when Dan and Ron called me to say, "Would you chop off your hair?" and I said, "Yeah, sure." I said, "Hey, I want to talk about the sex scenes." I said, look, I didn't know what the show was going to be, and I said, I want to make sure it's not lesbian sex for straight guys, and I want to make sure it's two women who are earthy and committed, and it's for each other. And they said, yeah, definitely. And I said, that great scene with who's that beautiful redheaded actress who I love, Julianne Moore, in Shortcuts, where she's ironing and she's naked from the waist down and she's having an argument with her husband. And I said, and will there be that day to day, we may have some nakedness, but we can also use it with maybe we're brushing our teeth, or maybe the sex is starts off we're brushing our teeth and things like that. And they said, yeah, definitely. And I remember thinking, wow, this is going to be groundbreaking, not just sexually or not just in the LGBT community, but also in the ordinariness of it, in making it just very ordinary and normal, and being able to see that, really humanizing it from all angles, from the mundane to the.
But did you get to iron with no pants?
I never got that in, but I was looking for it. I
Sheena
did,
gets down
but
to
I,
the
but I
bottom
did, but I
of
did get
the
to brush
question of the
I
hour.
did get to brush my teeth
in the
with
makeup
no pants.
in the makeup trailer.
While
every
Taya started
morning.
turning me on and I started turning her on. We were
Yeah.
brushing our teeth and I had no pants on, and I thought
Nice.
this is exactly what I was going for.
But that's funny because it amazed me that you said earlier, Michelle, that you weren't an LGBTQ advocate until Prop 8, because just that right there was such an advocate's thing to say.
It is.
I think you've been an advocate since you popped
well,
out of the
look,
womb.
I come from parents who are very liberal, and they're
Right.
both hardcore Democrats, and I was raised in a household that was constantly talking about politics, and so it's
Right.
in me, obviously, and I've always been an independent woman. But I think that I didn't kick into full steam and find my voice until the Prop 8 fiasco.
But that's a brilliant thing for you to have said right off the bat, because I think before Queer as Folk, we thought a lot. If two women are going to be together, there's going to be some funky bass. It's going to get a little bounce chicka wow
Yeah,
wow.
there's going to be some short dresses and a gun. There's going to be a gun.
And then everyone takes a shower, and we don't know why,
Yeah.
because they seem clean before.
But their breasts are very dirty. They really have to
Very
wash
dirty.
those
Certain
breasts
parts.
over
And there's definitely going to be
and
some
over
fake
and over
breasts.
again.
A lot of soap. A lot of soap.
I remember when Taya showed up at the thing, because we had to have a chemistry read, and I remember seeing her, and she was in her overalls and her tennis shoes, and I kept thinking, oh my God, if I show up and there's some bimbo there, I'm not doing the show.
Right.
And I saw this cute little Canadian girl, and she was all natural, and I was just like, oh, it's perfect. And I ran over to her, and literally I ran over and I got down on my hands and knees like I was going to propose or something, and I put my hand on her hand. I said, we're going to be great together. We are just fine. And I just knew it. I knew
wonderful.
that, okay, if this is where they're going, then I get it. I'm starting to see it, and it's going to be fucking great. So
It's wonderful. So wonderful.
Sheena, you actually brought up something I thought was really important, which is the idea of focusing on issues. That's sort of the obvious place to go. And one of the great things is we did obviously cover gay marriage and a lot of really important issues. But it was I remember it being an interesting journey. I know I specifically had some issue things to focus on.
Absolutely,
it was,
sure.
AIDS related or whatever, and HIV, I should say. But I remember one of the things that it could be a bit of a trap is to focus on the fact that it's an issue.
Yeah. Right.
And to have to remember, I mean, particularly, for those of us for whom it felt very charged and important, like the issue of gay marriage. It was, was dreaming about that since I was a little boy, and the idea that we were going to do this, and to have to go, no, we're just people who are living our lives and having this experience. And yes, it is important, but to sort of drop this macro idea that there's an overarching import, to what we're doing. It was interesting because it would be easy to sort of elevate into that place, rather than just keep it sort of very grounded and real and about the characters.
pass the butter and make the coffee. And
Randy, what about
talk
you?
about-
Has Queer as Folk, did it make you more of an outspoken advocate for things that were important for you because you sort of saw how it changed the world?
I think he just texted me that he got dropped, and
Oh.
if you call him back, he'll pretend that he wasn't dropped.
Oh,
and that he's
okay. All right, well, we're going to take a quick break
That's
and
great.
do our commercial break, and then we're going to get Randy back on the phone, pretend like that never happened. So if Randy asks, no one ever saw that.
Do I have time to get jelly beans?
You do. And jelly beans for Michelle. We'll take a quick break, and then we're right back with all of these wonderful actors. It's the Sheena Metal Experience on LA Talk Radio. Quick break, and we're right back with you with much more radio fun, and of course more with Randy on the line right after this.
You're listening to The Sheena Metal Experience with your host, Sheena Metal, only on LA Talk Radio.
It's the Sheena Metal Experience right here on LA Talk Radio. For more info on the show, latalkradio.com, SheenaMetalExperience.com. Don't forget to email me and let me know what you think of the show. Now, right before the break, of course, I have in the studio with me the amazing Scott Lowell, Robert Gant, Michelle Clunie, and, of course, on the phone, Randy Harrison. So great to have you all here from Queer as Folk talking about the Rise and Shine USA Con coming up in June right here in Los Angeles. And, Randy, we got cut off, and I was just about to ask you, if there are things in your life that you feel impassioned about and are an advocate for, and did doing Queer as Folk make you feel more directed towards those things, like Michelle said happened to her?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'd always been... Is someone talking? I'm sorry, I can't hear.
No,
it's
just
you.
you.
Just you.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, Queer as Folk just gave us, me a microphone that I'd never had before and an opportunity to reach a lot more people than I was able to before. I'd done sort of AIDS advocacy and stuff in high school, and I'd gone to schools and talked about sexuality and talked about safe sex practices, and I've always been sort of politically engaged, but suddenly having the attention that Queer as Folk put on me and having the opportunity to be representative and openly gay, not just to friends and family, but actually publicly, sort of create a completely different environment for me and opportunity for me.
Well, and it changes your life, right? I was thinking about it when you were talking about it earlier. Once you go there, once you become such a citizen of the universe and you become so plugged into the whole and so aware of being an advocate for everyone's rights, even communities that you're not even a part of, you can't really go back. After that, when you go back and try to think about things that seem very surface or just for you or very myopic.
It's true. I look at people, and it's not in a judgmental way. And sorry, I was checking my Facebook messages. I want to shout out to Jose and Angie.
Oh my
I love my Facebook page.
Oh my
I love my Facebook page. I love my fans. I look at people who aren't like hooked into this love revolution that's going on, this progress that we're experiencing, and as much as it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back, you really see where we're going as a country and as a world.
And
I
as a
think
world.
it's so exciting, and to not be part of that, I feel sorry for people to not be part of it. This is what's happening right now in our lives, and if you're hung up on shoe shopping or whatever else, you're missing the boat.
Isn't it funny?
Great.
And that's how they decided to end the show, like with it's not all about sex, it's all about love.
Yeah,
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
So true.
Yeah.
Well, and also we don't realize, I think, sometimes, and that was something that I didn't realize until I started working with the Harvey Milk Foundation, was that, the world sometimes looks to us to see what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as we think we have work to do, there are countries that are so far behind us. And we need to keep moving in the right direction so that they can move as well.
Absolutely.
Because whether we like it or not, this weird little chunk of land with immigrants on it has become something that the world looks to to see how we feel about things.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Oh gosh,
yeah.
and we got to keep leading. We have to keep leading and pushing people. And now I think it's only 7 senators, Democrats, who haven't come out for marriage equality. Only 7.
Yeah.
Only 7 left that we have to push out.
Okay, well,
get them out there.
That kind of brings me to an interesting thing, because it's I think I told you all during the break that Rise and Shine USA, what they did for the convention is they gave away a couple of pairs of tickets. They had people email us over the last week.
Oh, great.
And each one of us picked a question that we like to give you today on the air.
Oh, good.
And the one that I picked, maybe not interestingly enough, was about marriage equality. So here's what the question was. What would each of your Queer as Folk characters think of the recent and ongoing advances in the fight for marriage equality? To what extent would each of them be involved in advocating for marriage equality? And if the show were being made today, do you think it would be different due to the political climate and the changing public opinions about various LGBT-related issues? I thought that was a brilliant question.
Who asked that question?
And that's a question from Rachel. Isn't that brilliant? Go, Rachel. Rachel
Yeah.
Bernstein.
Rachel Bernstein.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah,
Rachel.
she was at the convention in Germany.
Yes.
Yeah. She's
I mean, that's like a
lovely.
journalist
She's great.
question. That's
Portland?
amazing.
No, she's
from Oregon?
She's from Oregon. She's an Oregon
So
girl.
how does she feel that if the show were on today?
Yeah, I mean, do you think, Robert, if the show were starting today and the first episode were going to be airing this summer, do you think that how do you think it would be different in regards to the way that marriage equality was talked about, the way that, because, the LGBT community grows every minute, and it certainly has grown in leaps and bounds publicly in the last 12 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, enormously. I think we would be where we are. So, we have made advances. We would start from there. I think it would just be an extension of what we're experiencing today. I mean, certainly Ben would be all for. I mean, I think it's a given that's sort of an obvious thing that marriage was very important for him, and as it is for me, so somebody else jump in.
I think we could just, if somebody wants to start up a Kickstarter page, we could find out where these characters would be today on marriage equality.
Oh, wow.
We could Veronica Mars it.
Totally.
Queer as Folk web series.
Exactly.
Or not a web series, but do a film. I mean, I think it'd be
I think a film would be fantastic.
I think it'd be really fascinating to see where these characters
I wonder. I'm sitting to think, would it really be that different? Because we still have. I mean, it's still the fight. There's still the struggle. There's still, even though there's.
Well, I think what's hard is that we were ahead of our time, and so it's almost like the time caught up with Queer as Folk.
Right.
And so
It's
we would
true.
still be
And
doing what
we
were
did
doing
have
before.
a bigger. I mean, I felt like because we really started getting into the marriage stuff like fourth and fifth season. So that's like 2004, 2005, and we had such we had a much bigger boogeyman in terms of Bush in the White House.
Yeah.
That gave that really helped. That kind of helps
Define
a lot.
good and
it's
bad.
a weird. I mean, I'm thinking about it too, and it's because the tides do seem to be turning.
It would be more nuanced, right?
Yeah, it would be a much more nuanced discussion.
It would be about DOMA. It would be about the other states.
Exactly.
There's no question. Because now I'm remembering very clearly when we were going into that season, they had decided that they were going to do this in Toronto because they wanted to make sure that it was going to be a legal gay marriage.
Yeah.
And then Gavin Newsom started doing his thing in San Francisco, and Massachusetts, the Supreme Court came down with a case legalizing, saying you couldn't discriminate. And so all of a sudden, I know Dan and Ron were sort of scrambling, going, oh, wait, should we do this in Massachusetts? Because it'd be much better if we had a legal marriage in the United States. But they're like, well, we can't bank on it. They might roll that back, which, we know how that sort of all went down. And that was, and they wanted it to be an homage to Toronto as well. But I think they would probably consider adjusting to the struggle.
Sure. So it'd be
as
more
it is
nuanced.
today.
I think it'd be
Right.
more nuanced, which could be really interesting because we were very black and white.
Yeah.
We were the
very
rebels,
black and white.
and we were
Right.
fighting for something up against Bush and a very.
It was kind of
odd-
easier to be black and white.
Don't you
It's
think
easy
that
to be black
if
and
the
white,
show was
yeah.
starting now, it would probably start with there being a couple who was legally married already at the start of the show?
But who
There
didn't
would
have
be-
rights? Who didn't have the federal rights?
Right.
That would be the issue.
Well, Edie Windsor, and you could have something.
Right.
Like
somebody
that.
would maybe Melanie and Lindsay or
I could
somebody
take
would
on
be
a case.
would be already.
I
ready.
would be fighting
No, you
the
could take
case
on a
in front of
case
the Supreme
and be
Court.
angry.
Of course, Dan and Ron would write that I lose the case because
Randy, how do you
Melanie
think?
always
they always
loses.
wrote that I lost.
Randy, how do you think that it's
I had it in for me. I was a minority of a minority.
If there was any legal issues on the show and Melanie was representing you, I always felt like we should have a character in the background doing the
Right.
the hand to the throat thing, like,
Yeah,
no, don't
yeah.
let her represent you.
right? If only if you'd been a person of color,
Yeah.
could you have been more minority?
Yeah.
And maybe had one leg.
Well,
Yes.
no, but it was interesting. I know I say this every time too, but I'll say it, forever probably. But it was interesting being, one of two lesbians on a show that I would go to Dan and Ron, and they would say, well, it's a show about boys becoming men, and I always piped in, and girls becoming women.
Right.
And I always felt a little bit like, hey, what about us? And so, there's always that there for me.
Randy, how do you think that it's different for maybe people who are 17, 18, the age that Justin was supposed to be when the show started, now than it was for you when you were that age?
I think it's probably really different, but I really think it depends on where you're coming from and the sort of what area of the country you're in, what your
Agreed.
family, what
Yep.
religious background you're raised in. I mean, I think it can vary drastically, within the same 2-mile radius. But I think generally there's a lot more representation, which I know when I was 16, 17, or I guess 14, 15, like before I was coming out, I was desperate for it. I was going to the video store, like finding Morris and like E.M. Forster books, and I was just desperate for representation. You weren't seeing it that often. There was a little bit on The Real World at the time. The Tales of the City movie came out, but there wasn't the I mean, it's not saturated now, but there's so much more representation now, which I know would have relieved me of a lot of anxiety and loneliness at that age.
And isn't that interesting? Because when you were talking, Randy, after Robert talked, all I could think about was how much easier it was for you at the age that you were when the show started than it was hearing Robert's stories at the age he was when the show started. And probably somebody 10 years older than Robert or 15 years older would say, well, there was hardly any content at that time.
Yeah.
So it just gets easier.
So.
Yeah, let me tell you, my goddaughter, she's 6 years old, and she's so cool. She's, I mean, I'm her godmother, so what can I say? I mean, this is a cool chick. I mean, I'm just saying, I love her so much. And she'll sit there and she'll, we'll be sitting around talking. She's like, oh, yeah? So what's the story? Do they have 2 dads, 2 moms, the mom and the dad? What's up? And she's just so like, it's just part of her world.
Yeah.
And she has
amazing.
nothing on it. And I love seeing the new generation. It almost makes me cry how wonderful they are and how far we've, progressed.
It is interesting.
Evolved.
I just did an episode of this show called Baby Daddy, also on ABC Family.
Beautiful.
And the father is played by this actor Greg Grunberg, who was on Heroes, really great guy.
Yeah, wonderful.
Very kind of. And I play his partner. We've been together for a year, and the episode starts where I come back to meet the family and the baby christening, and I want to get married, and he's kind of wigging out about it. But the moment when we talked about it in front of the audience, the whole audience was like, ooh, like cool, like it was really cool.
Right.
It was like, and I remember talking to Dan Berenson, the exec producer, about it. He said it's amazing what a non-issue it is. It's a non-issue.
Yeah.
Okay, Dad's got a partner who wants to get married, and they're, it was.
And can I just say, speaking about it being a non-issue, have you guys, okay, so you're watching MSNBC, and you're watching these pundits and these people they dragged out of God knows where to talk about, marriage equality. And they refer to it as gay marriage, of course, because they don't know.
Because it's MSNBC.
Because it's gay marriage,
Right.
it's gay breakfast. I'm like, what the?
On Fox, they refer to it as
Where did they get these people?
Right.
And they all talk about, well, where did this come from? And I'm like, where have you been living? Do you get out in the world? Do any of these politicians or any of these pundits or a few of the justices, do they get out in the world and talk to people?
Yeah.
What do they do? Do they hide under their covers for 18 hours a day? I mean, it shocks me that they are so far behind the rest of the country, the majority of the country. It gets me upset, and I know that I'm a little wound up, but
She's had jelly beans, ladies and
most
gentlemen.
of our representatives do not really represent America.
That's
and
true.
It's
Well, and I
disgusting.
also think there are a lot of people that were a lot happier when things happened behind closed doors and people just didn't talk about it. Like, I don't care who's gay, but I don't want to know about that. Kind of like a universal, worldwide social don't ask, don't tell. Like, and you'd find in families where, Uncle so-and-so never got married because, he's a little special.
Right.
But we love him. So it was a lot of private support, but don't ever talk about it. And I think that a lot of politicians are still stuck in that. Like,
they
look,
are.
I don't care who sleeps with who, but why do we have to talk about it and
I'm
make
sorry.
a decision?
Right.
I hang out with politicians from time to time, and they're so traditional, and as much as, they're trying to buck the status quo, a few of them, there's still this ingrained conservative, even in our liberal politicians, this real conservative streak that just makes me ill.
Where it's all been, and I think, with where we came into the scheme, and I will say it hurts my feelings a little bit how little Queer as Folk is referenced in everything in the winds of change that are blowing through our country now.
Right.
I
need to change that.
I do get a little upset about that.
It is an odd thing.
It's a very odd thing.
I think it's because we were so out there and we were so unafraid. It still freaks people out because people talk about Will and Grace.
I think it's some gay folks.
Yeah.
Quite honestly, because I think it was shame.
Yeah.
There was a feeling of shame.
They don't want to be humanized?
Or have our dirty laundry aired. Because we showed a lot of the underbelly of,
Sure.
of the community. And I know there were a lot of folks who at the beginning were very excited, but were also angry. They were very angry. Don't show drug use. Don't show these things.
Well,
But if it was a show about straight people,
Right.
Robert, they would have no problem
Right.
with there being a crystal
it's
meth
also
character
where
or there being a
yeah.
character who had AIDS.
But it's also like
Right.
it's as Dan and Ryan would say,
Or it would get an Oscar.
It's
right.
it was
Get an
just-
Oscar.
If it was about straight people, it'd get an Oscar.
but-
and Robert Gant
Look,
for Queer as Folk.
It's people who I mean, like we were living behind a wall, living a lie.
Right.
And so if you tell the truth, it's shameful, it's scary. I don't want it, and so to have to deal with that truth. And granted, it was it was stylized and all that sort of thing. You were going to talk.
Well, no, that's okay. I mean, I was just going to say. I mean, just
I'm getting fired
to
up.
that
I'm
point.
fired up too. We're all fired
awesome.
up.
I mean, to this point, and then I'll get back to what I was going to say. But also, I mean, it was a drama, and like Dan and Ron, I thought very cleverly lampooned when they put have us all watching Gay as Blazes during the series, which was the most boring soap ever, where all the gay characters were so nice and sat around a table,
Right.
and had
Conservative.
talked about books and things like that, and and
Acceptable.
Brian would say like, "Where's all the hugging and the hugging?" But I was going to say, what I always felt about our show and where it came in the evolution of all this was that it was all about getting people, and it's something I realized from back in Chicago and the roots of prejudice and how it all worked. It's like, until people feel like they know somebody, it's easy to hate or be afraid of something you don't know. And I mean, that's the root of all phobias. And until you know it and
Put a face on it.
and put a face on it, you're going to remain afraid of it. And I feel like we started that, with a lot of people, and I know we did, from especially a number of straight women who watch the show who have now all of a sudden become very active in PFLAG or things like that because they never knew a gay person before, and they felt like now they knew them, and wow, I never even knew there were these problems. And you still see it like with some of the senators, especially the Republicans, who don't, until they realize they have a gay son, all of a sudden I'm for gay marriage, and until it touches their lives personally, I agree, they're so removed from the situation. So that's the job, and that's where the media and entertainment, and I think us and Will and Grace and Modern Family now, and all these shows that are making people feel like, I know a gay person, even if they, even if they don't get out of their house, they feel like they know a gay person now, and they're okay. They're just like me or whatever. And I know that's, I don't know. I mean, that's.
No, it's very important.
Yeah,
Powerful.
I agree.
But it makes a difference, and I think it's helped. It's helped move things along as quickly as it has, because I mean, the civil rights movement didn't, if there was many TV shows about black people back in the 50s and 60s, I think maybe that all would have moved forward a lot quicker.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Scott, now was that something that was shocking for you all when you first started having contact with your fans, that the show had an enormous amount of heterosexual female fans?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of interesting, but I'll tell you, when I first saw, I think it was Brian and what's his face, Gail and Randy's.
What's his
well, no, I've got confused for a second.
Who are you guys again?
No, I remember Randy's name. I couldn't remember Gail's name. When I first saw their love scene, I remember thinking, look, up until that point in my life, I'll be honest about my sex life, I had never seen two men making love in front of me. And my menage a trois had been centered around another woman and a man. And so when I...
Wow,
Go
true
Michelle.
confessionals
Scott,
on
here we go.
Sheena
True
Metal
Especially
Show.
on the Sheena Metal Experience.
Don't give her any more jelly beans.
And so when I saw
Magic jelly
that,
beans.
I thought to myself, wow, that's really hot.
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful.
Beautiful love scenes.
Wow.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Absolutely
And so I
beautiful.
remember I said in an interview, I said, I think women around, the country, and not that a lot of American women have menage a trois, but maybe we're losing our puritanical, beginnings. But I remember thinking, wow, they might start rethinking, that configuration. And so I wasn't surprised.
I remember it making sense to me a little. Like when I thought about it, I was like, oh, well, straight guys like watching girl-on-girl action. And so it kind of makes sense that straight women would like guy-on-guy action in the same way. And, yeah, I mean, I will say I had like 2 or 3 blind dates I've been on where they, in their research, had watched some Queer as Folk before I went on our date. And so they had seen me doing things,
Right.
and the dates went very well, I think.
It's always good to date a little stalker.
But can we just talk about that? Because I've gone out on so many dates with guys who have Googled me before the date, and then you
Yep.
show up, and you kind of start to get a sense whether they did a pre-date Google, and as soon as they either want to talk about really sexual things, or they want to talk about pediatric AIDS.
Especially those
Like they want to drill me on all the various organizations and fundraising I do, and I always feel like I'm put on the spot.
Yeah.
And I can't just show up as Michelle. I have to show up as a spokesperson, or I have to show up as this person
That's
who
why
knows
I guess
everything
that's why
about sex.
mine just ask all the time, "Are you okay?" Throughout the whole date, are you doing okay? Are you okay?
Hey, I got to do another Facebook shout out to Rachel.
Oh my
Oh,
I'm so
Lordy.
Facebook
I
shout out
love
to Rachel.
Rachel. Rachel, we love you. We'll see you soon.
Real
Well, at least they
time
don't ask you to
yourself.
show up in a Klingon outfit. I mean, you could have
Yeah,
that problem.
Exactly.
That could be fun, though.
So, now, what about you?
in a Woody Allen sort of way.
Randy, what about for you? Have you had that kind of thing too, where people know you, and obviously people have seen you on a show, barely clothed, in very intimate moments? Is that ever kind of strange?
Yeah, it is strange. I don't notice it that much anymore. I was thinking when they were bringing up the dating story that I've never ended up dating someone seriously who had ever seen the show. And I don't know
barometer.
why. I think I can always tell
Smart.
when people are looking at me as if I'm Justin and can't see me as
Yeah.
Randy. And I'm like, stop, this is different than what you're remembering or what you're seeing. So
Is it because they ask you to do that? Is it because they ask you to do that pole dance thing with the cowboy hat?
don't remind me of
Sorry.
That was a great moment, though. You're a hell of a dancer.
Thank you.
Oh, he is a dancer.
You know, if the whole Broadway thing doesn't pan out, you know that you can always do that.
Yeah, he's a dancer.
Sequel to Magic Mike.
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, now we're reading the questions, of course, that the Rise and Shine USA, as I mentioned earlier, is giving away 3 pairs of tickets to the
It's gonna be
to the
fun.
show.
That's awesome.
It's going to be a
People
love
ask great
fest. Love
questions.
Fest USA.
So we each picked a question, and you guys heard mine, the one that I picked. Now this is this question is the next one. Since we're talking about fans, this is what I'm going to ask you all. Does any of the cast have a good fan story of a strange, crazy meeting or gift from a fan? One of those the fan you'll never forget types.
Oh, yeah.
So let's go, Robert. You
Crazy
first.
meeting or
Yeah.
gift?
Either one. Do you have
Okay.
a wacky fan story?
I remember being in Duane Reade in New York, and which is like a drugstore in New York, and this big burly, like kind of not very shaven, very just
bear.
big hair, yeah,
Big
like,
bear.
is kind of walking, and he's in the same aisle, and I think he was sort of like following me. I felt very uncomfortable, and I didn't know what was going on because he looks like a biker, like, and finally, I'm standing in line. He goes, hey, I'm like, he goes, hey, are you're on the show with all the guys, And I was like, and I was honestly, I was totally expecting some sort of a homophobic thing. Like I mean, I don't know why, but he said, love the show, the wife, the kids, the whole. We all love the show. It's great. This is what he said. It's great family entertainment.
Oh my God!
Nice.
I will never forget.
100
that
bikers
moment.
agree.
Genius.
Queer as folk is good family
The
entertainment.
whole family.
Robert, genius.
It was
That was hysterical.
unbelievable.
Oh my
They're going to
God.
run us on ABC Family now.
It was
think.
exactly like
Fantastic,
that.
yes.
That's hilarious.
That's
It was
great.
completely
Wow.
what happened.
Scott, do you have one?
I mean, I have many. Some I've told. I mean, of people hitting me and yelling things at me in the street, especially when Ted was a drug addict.
Oh, you
People-
told that on my
I
show
told
the
it on
very
your
first
show.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, so there's been things like that. The one I think I haven't ever told anyone. I think I maybe
True
shared it with one
confessionals.
other friend of mine. But I got a letter from a woman in Germany who wanted to marry me. She had some. I mean, it's kind of a sad story too. It's not going to be a hilarious one. So,
Oh.
but she had sent
Debbie
me
Downer.
literally her like a picture of her passport and her son's passport that she wanted me to help. I mean, that she was so in love with me that she wanted me to help her escape from Germany and this terrible life she was in, and sent me her. And it's kind of again where, I mean, I should have picked a funnier story, I suppose, but it, like the power that. The way people feel they know you. I mean, it's something that just always struck me of, and I didn't know what to do. I mean, it was scary and sad and heartbreaking all at the same time, and I didn't know what to do. But it's one that's like always stuck. I mean, other than the fans who truly like write me and like you're not so bad looking and you know, and all that kind of stuff, and really like, you know, you should think, you know, who just really confuse you with the character so much that they feel they need to take care of you.
Right.
I mean, that's the majority.
I'm sorry you can't get a date.
Yeah, exactly.
I have a brother.
Yeah, exactly. And then I still, I mean, to this day, I get tweets from people. Someone sent me one just a few weeks ago of like, you shouldn't let people make fun of you because of your age. I was like, what? Who makes fun of me because of my age? What are you talking about?
Right.
So that was a terrible story to tell, but
No,
it's one that stuck out me of
interesting.
like that she felt like somehow I could save her. You know,
Your
like,
character was very sympathetic. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
if
Very
I'm going to
darling.
write a character on TV to save me from my life in Germany, I might write your character because you had a big heart.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's, and I told you the first time you were on the show that if I had a queer as folk crush, it would have been on Ted.
Yeah.
Because to me, that sort of sweetness, I kept thinking like, what's wrong with everybody? This is the guy you want.
Well, I
the
reached
darling
out
guy.
to you
Well,
when we were first in Toronto, and I was waiting to get curtains up in my bedroom. I was afraid to sleep in my bedroom because I was on the ground floor in this like railroad house, and I called Scott to stay on his futon.
But the thing isn't that a testament? And I know, Scott, you and I've talked about this before too, that on the show, that isn't that a testament to your acting? That people think that's what you're really like, because you could
because if
really
they knew me
be different.
in real life, they would run the other way.
No.
No. I mean, it's but that was the. I mean, yes. I mean, that's very nice. But it is that, you know, it just was one of those moments, and it was fair. It was kind of early on too, to where I realized, you know, and there's a difference even between like film actors and TV actors, that, you know, when you're coming into somebody's house in that way, they really feel like they know you, and they take you in a different way than going to a movie theater and seeing someone up on the screen.
Right.
And so it was just one of those first moments that really struck me of like the impact and the power and the responsibility in a way that you have with people.
So true, because they live with you week to week for 5 years.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think particularly for those of us, you know, thinking about the dating thing, for those of us who are gay, you know, I can't speak for Randy or Peter, and I know, Randy, you said you didn't date anyone who had seen the show, but there definitely was
It just kind of happened, though. It wasn't like
Smart.
conscious.
I think that's smart, Randy.
Right. Yeah. No. Very much so. But
Wait, what happened? What's
my experience was that, you know, in dating, you know, there it was hard to maybe find folks. Well, there were certainly plenty of people who didn't see the show, but I remember sitting down and realizing that they definitely thought I was Ben.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Right.
I had a boy. I was living with Stuart at the time, and he was like, I remember when the show was over, I started getting back to myself, and I think he missed Melanie.
But I think it's because, you know,
And I'm not kidding you.
we do bring ourselves to the character. I mean, there are definitely a lot.
So he bought you an iron.
No, but I think you know, look, being an actor, I think it can be confusing for someone who lives with you, because you're in character. And I was in character for, you know, you're shooting 6 months out of the year. It's hard to rub that character off of you, especially a character that is that strong. And
Sure.
And
I remember thinking, are they going to be disappointed when they find out? Like,
they're going to wake up with Gilda.
And things,
Right.
Yeah.
You know, like,
Right, and they're not an English professor?
Yeah.
I'm not just that guy, you know. I mean, there's obviously enough similarity. There's enough crossover, but there's plenty that's different.
No, I remember
you know?
Stuart said to me, it's like, you know, you're Melanie, but then, you know, it's like I'm living with Lucille Ball, because I do ditzy things at home. You know, that's just my thing. And but I had yeah, that's interesting.
Could you just be a little tougher at home, Michelle? Randy, how about you? Randy, do you have a good fan story, Randy, for us?
I have a creepy one, but I don't want to share it.
Yeah, I got a couple creepies that I'm holding back
private.
on.
He does have some creepy ones. Randy has some especially creepy ones.
Yeah.
But you know what? I will say it's been probably, I would imagine, harder for me to accept the whole fan thing freaking out probably more than most people. And what's been most satisfying for me is, you know, having done these conventions and having done theater and meeting people backstage, is that now, like, I know these people and, like, really respect them, and I'm so flattered that, you know, they know our work, and I understand why it's so important to them now, and it's like really changed my perspective on it.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. Michelle, do you have a story?
You know, I'm trying to think. I know that, like, just today, you know, I cut bangs, right? And ever since I cut my bangs, people are recognizing me, because I think that my hair is...
your forehead's back.
My forehead's back.
Oh,
yeah.
there's that forehead.
And
That happens
for some
to me,
reason,
too.
Yeah, for some reason.
I get certain haircuts, and suddenly
certain
everybody's
haircuts.
recognizing me.
Yeah, and I didn't change my hair for a long time. I grew it out, and it was long, and now I've got these bangs, and everyone's recognizing me. And I realized that, you know, this week has been like I've just been going nonstop. It's been a tough week, and I've had like 2 or 3 people come up to me and almost on the edge of tears and saying how important my work has been. And I'm like, Jesus, God, well, that's something to really
awesome.
That's amazing to get that in the middle of a day when you're running around. You don't know if you're going to get everything done, and it's beautiful. And the gift that they give you is that for me it gives me this kind of sense that I'm on the right path, that I've made the right choices in my life, and
awesome.
And it means a lot to me. My fans mean a lot to me. But I do have a funny story to kind of balance out Scott's.
Thank you. Sorry, everybody. Sorry.
No, I was in. It's kind of a silly, stupid story, but I was in Toronto, and this was like the second season, and I was by myself, and I was like, I said to the costume designer, I said, hey, let's go out dancing. So we went out dancing, and we ended up sharing this joint, and I had not had pot for like God knows how long. I cannot remember how long it had been since I'd smoked a joint. And I got so stoned that I had to sit outside by the entrance of the club, and this guy, some stranger, was sitting next to me, and I started talking to him, and he turned to me throughout this like really long conversation. He's like, oh my God, you're Melanie from Queer as Folk. And I was so stoned, and I kind of had forgotten who I was. And I turned to him and I said, oh my God, I am Melanie from Queer as Folk. And we started laughing and jumping up and down going, I'm Melanie from Queer as Folk. And it was such a stoned moment, and I will never forget this moment. I don't know where the guy is, but we were freaking out and laughing so hard, and that to me is one of the funniest fan stories I've ever had.
But that's an interesting thing that you bring up that I think maybe if you're not an actor you don't know, Michelle, that when you're doing a role for 2 months or 5 years or 20 years, you sort of live with that character. You carry him or her around with you all the time.
Yeah.
So even when you're on break, that character is still hanging in your periphery because you have to get right back in and do it again. Yeah. And I think that that's kind of a strange place to be, right? You're sort of in a, limbo. Especially when you're actually on set or you're actually doing, 8 shows a week on stage, you're sort of in a place between your life and their life all the time. And even if you're out picking up your dry cleaning or you're getting the car washed, you have that person in your mind.
It's very different. I mean, it's doing a play, and we've said it before, it's like it's a 2, maybe 3 hour journey that you're taking the same journey every night, and it's easy to compartmentalize it. It can maybe difficult, but you can compartmentalize it in your life. But when you're spending 16 hours a day for 6 to 9 months,
and then doing promotional stuff
and doing all that, I mean, it's hard. That was always my struggle for the 5 years, was how do I leave this at the office? It's very difficult to when you're in the middle of it, and it would always take me like a few months to kind of detox from doing the show before I felt like I could even talk to my friends like I was me and they were my friends.
Right.
Yeah. For years.
Especially through that arc that you had with Ted where he was on crystal meth.
Yeah,
that was just retching, and some of the best acting I've ever seen during that period. I mean, but you just had to come to the set every day and just be retched out, and it just went on and on. I think a lot of television shows it would have been like,
it's like my pregnancy on the show.
Exactly.
It went on and on. It's like, get this.
I think a lot of shows would have been like, okay, and now he's on drugs, and now I'm in rehab and I'm better.
Right.
A lot of times television shows deal with something just a little bit at a time. Like, Robert, you were talking how maybe some people, the show was hard for them because things weren't dealt like that. It wasn't like, and this person has a problem, and next week it's fixed. I mean, there would be a season or a season and a half of somebody almost dealing with something in real time with you.
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing.
They did it with a lot of things, with your bug chasing, with
it was beautiful.
So everyone had their storylines.
But that was
everything
the brilliance of Dan and Ron. I look back and I think, God, that must have been a hard show to construct. Just now that I wrote a play, I'm like, Jesus, what did they go through? Trying to figure out all these storylines. Right. And now I have so much more compassion. And I think too that I love it when I hear shows or saying, oh, it's a new Queer as Folk. I'm like, unless you have the heart and the commitment to these beautiful storylines that really deal with issues that are not easy to deal with, then it has nothing to do, and it's nothing like Queer as Folk. I mean, Dan and Ron really made it special with these amazing storylines.
They did, and the toll it took on the two of them, as Ron would he's said more, in the years since the series, but like having to live with all these voices in his head, and it's why there were many times when the show was going on, sometimes since then too, where he calls us by our character names instead of our real names, because these characters were living in his head for that. So whatever we were wrestling with, he's wrestling with it times 9.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
for 5 years, and
Being a paternal figure to all the characters and all of you at the same time.
Yeah, for the
Well,
two.
Dan
then
was
Dan
more
and
the
Ron.
paternal
Yeah,
character.
but they were. But I mean, I think in some ways it drove him a little crazy. I mean, it's like, and
It
how
has
can
to.
it not? I mean,
How
that's
can it not?
and I
Yeah.
think for all
Yeah.
these guys who do these series, who you hear interviewed, from Matthew Weiner to
Right.
David
Well,
Milch
look at
to
Vince, who does Breaking Bad?
Vince Gilligan.
Vince
Yeah,
Gilligan,
I mean,
who
it's
is
like
a genius.
Yeah.
Breaking Bad is one of my favorite shows.
Yeah.
Great show. Well,
I've
and
seen
Peter
every
on the set
episode.
today, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Day
So-
one of his baby.
Wow.
Yeah.
But this one was different from the others because they were giving voice to a community that had been voiceless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Right.
And
so
they had a lot of input.
a lot of input.
Oh, yeah.
People, that had a very big stake.
It's a very outspoken community.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, very much, and they had to kind of weather all that too, and the expectations of being the first one and being, because while there had been other gay characters, obviously nobody had done things like we did on Queer as Folk before, and no
Yeah,
one had
so everything
represented
was
gay
being
life.
scrutinized.
So everything was being scrutinized.
Yeah.
Everybody wanted to see themselves up there. I mean, I remember doing the promotional tour after the first season when we were already exhausted. We'd done 9 months of shooting, and then before we could even get to our own beds, we had to go on a promotional tour on college campuses. And the last one we did was in Berkeley.
Berkeley. Oh,
which,
yeah.
in Berkeley is
Berkeley.
not
Wow.
going to take it easy on you. And
Oh,
they
no.
started ripping into us about these.
I think I actually got angry.
Where are the people of color on the show? Oh, I remember I finally yelled at this guy because he had asked us something about, I think, like, where are the people of color on
People
the
of
show,
color.
and we answered as best we could, which was essentially we're actors on the show.
Yeah,
we don't.
and
We don't.
admitted
But
that
he
we
wouldn't.
needed
He
people of
wouldn't let it
color.
go, and we answered
Yeah.
it as well as we could. And I remember we moved on to another
I
question.
think I
and
said, why don't you go make your own show?
Yeah, I
or
saw him out
something.
there just like.
I was
he was just
pissed
like
off.
shaking his head still, like he just
Right.
wasn't
that's
satisfied.
the
And I
thing,
said, like, what do you want? What do you want? What can we do? I mean, like
Yeah.
we understand everybody wants to see themselves up there because it's the first thing, but
Right.
you have to give it time. And this was after the first season.
yeah.
Give
But
it time.
I think this comes back to what you were saying earlier, which was so on point, which is that the show does get overlooked in some of these references.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a grudge a little bit that gets carried because it meant so much,
Yeah.
and because
It pushed a lot of buttons. It was emotionally charged.
In part, it's community that wanted our voice represented in the way that they wanted it represented.
Yeah.
From a perfectionistic standpoint, I mean, there's a lot of the community that wants to make everything look perfect.
Right,
Like
right.
that whole sort of best little boy in the world thing. And it's like you didn't do that. And I think there's almost this carrying of an anger that it couldn't be everything. There's just no way it could accomplish.
But there's also
that.
a thing in the community, I think, and I think you touched on this a little bit before, Robert, that and when we were teasing Michelle about how many minorities Melanie was.
Yeah.
You can never, so we're doing this beautiful show and we're breaking ground
Yeah.
with LGBT characters. Then it's suddenly, well, why are they not of color? Where is the disabled one? Where's the mentally handicapped
Right.
one?
Yeah.
I mean,
That was
suddenly
me.
it
Yeah.
becomes,
That was Ted.
well, Ted, yes.
Or the outrage that Michael had rejected Ben for
Oh,
being
yeah.
positive.
Yeah.
Right,
because
sure,
of the
but that was very
Yeah.
real. That
Yeah.
was a real community issue.
Very
Yeah.
real, very
Wow.
charged.
Okay, so while I've got you, we have to do the third question, and
Yes,
I want to
please.
do that. And while we're
Boy.
talking about your characters, now's the time. Okay, so this is from Rory, and Rory will also be getting
Rory.
tickets to the Rise and Shine USA
Congratulations.
Con.
Rory.
After last year's
Fun.
convention, Rory says, I think it's obvious how much the show has impacted the lives of so many people around the world. Yet even though I thoroughly knew how much the show impacted me and others in the fandom, I was overwhelmed with how intense and far-reaching the love for Queer as Folk was. It seems like every fan I've talked to since the original air date of the show, which is probably hundreds at this point, has a specific character's moment in a scene, story arc, or quotation that has resonated so deeply that it's become a touchstone for them. Subconsciously or often purposefully, this thing has bloomed into their day-to-day life, affecting it in little or often life-changing ways. I would like to know if the actors have something they've carried with them that's uniquely a part of their experience with Queer as Folk, and if they feel like sharing that, how that has personally or professionally affected them. That's a beautiful question.
That's great.
Wonderful,
Good job,
Rory. Thank
Rory.
you.
That's worth
Wow.
some tickets.
These questions are amazing.
Oh my God.
Really.
So,
best questions
anybody
I've
have
ever heard.
Randy,
I know.
why don't you go first? Do you have something that about Justin that you carry with you, or something?
I have a moment that I always remember very strongly, both shooting it and then when I saw it, and sort of the juxtaposition of the memory of having shot it and then seeing it. And it was when, at the end of season 1, when Justin is put into that ambulance. He's on a gurney and he's put into the ambulance. And in my memory, there's an overhead shot of like me on the gurney going into the thing. And I remember really specifically what it felt like, because it was freezing and I was covered in faint blood, so I was like wet. My hair was wet, and it was outside, and I was on a gurney being unconscious, virtually, and being put into this ambulance. And I remember thinking, God, I hope I never actually experience being put into an ambulance in a gurney covered in blood, because it's terrifying. It was terrifying. And I'll never forget the feeling of like being completely helpless, being strapped down, being covered in what felt like blood and freezing, and being put into an ambulance. And then I remember, less than a month later, we were watching the episodes practically, and seeing that overhead shot, and just how powerful it was, and sort of being able to see it from the outside, and also having such a strong memory of what it felt like to be being put into an ambulance. It was so strange, and it was one of those moments where you're like, I'm so glad I'm an actor, because this is one of those crazy things that really feel like I know what this is like in life, and I thank God did not have to actually experience it.
Yeah.
Well, and that's a scene, right? That's almost like Shakespearean.
Yeah.
Where first of all, when you're at your prom and Brian shows up and you guys dance, and it's almost like that perfect romantic moment that we all want to have in our lives, no matter whom it is that we date. Yeah. And then that the ecstasy of the two of you together in that kind of connection that we as human beings all strive for. And then out of the blue, the act of violence, it sort of snaps you back into the reality of, well, that's life on the earth, right? I mean, it's perfect for a while, and then something horrible happens, and it snaps you back into reality. And that there's such a, I think, emotionally, I remember seeing that when it first aired, and thinking, oh my God, that's a lot to drag a viewer through. First, we're all so happy for you guys, and the beautiful dancing together, and the perfect prom, and the prom more perfect moment than many people have had at their own proms. And then all of a sudden, bam, and then you're in the ambulance, and we don't know if you're dead. And so I can imagine to act through that must have been a lot. That's intense, Randy.
Yeah.
Okay, Michelle, how about you?
You know, I had so many moments flashing through my head just now. The one that I fell on was at the moment when my character asks Lindsay to marry her. And I think that it was just something about the romance, the way it was lit, and we had the chuppah and all that. Did I pronounce that right?
You did very well.
A little more. I know my listen, I haven't played Melanie for a long time.
I know. We'll get you back.
I lost my huh.
There you go.
Maybe you can help me get my huh back later.
Michelle's Gentile again.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Chuppah. That was good.
That was good.
So that moment was, that moment was just a real romantic, beautiful moment when I pick her up and I twirl her around and
which you guys replicated so beautifully in Cologne.
You know what? Yes, I did try to replicate it, and yes, I dropped her. I dropped Taya on the stage. I own it. I own it.
These are the things fans have to look forward to at the convention.
I will not try it again. I promise you, fans, you will not have to sit through that odd, awkward, uncomfortable moment again. I had not had sleep for 2 days, and Taya didn't work with me. She didn't jump up. Okay, anyway. And I'll tell you my other favorite moment is when there's this beautiful moment where beautiful, it was rugged and sexual, where we have sex that came out of this anger. And so it shows the polarities of our relationship. And I remember we wanted to make it like The Postman Always Rings Twice, where I throw her on the table and I almost like rape her. And the thing I liked about our relationship is, something I was always working on as an actor was to find all these different sexual colors. So it was never just like, oh, don't know, we're doing sex just to have sex, to find these different types of sex, lazy morning Sunday sex, rape sex, prison sex. No, but really.
Someone's going to hashtag rape sex now, and it's going to be all over Twitter.
Geez, I didn't mean that, but you know what I'm saying. It was like we were always going for these different sorts of colors in their sex life to show that women are sexual creatures, and
sure.
And lesbians especially. I wanted to make sure that we were keeping up with the men and that we weren't pigeonholed into this stereotype of lesbian bed death. And so that was important to me, to humanize
right.
their
the women don't just sit around and knit.
Yeah, I was always watching out for that
Good
and to
for
make
you.
sure we had our, that. So that was something I enjoyed.
It's hard to beat it, right?
Yeah.
Good.
Randy's was death and Michelle's was sex. Scott, you're up.
Well, I mean,
marriage.
I have a lot. I mean, it was hard, I learned a lot from playing that character. I think, given the personal nature of this show, I know rape sex. It's gonna
Hashtag rape
There's gonna
sex.
be a line. There's gonna be a line of T-shirts.
No,
I'm waiting for
okay,
the first Queer as Folk fan to do it.
Okay, can we stop? Can we stop, fans? Don't do it. Don't do it. I love you all. I love you all.
Shout out to all of Michelle's Facebook
Shut
fans.
up.
Rape sex.
Stop. I'm going on there right now.
This is too much
Oh,
fun.
she's
my
going on
God.
Facebook now. Do not create rape sex T-shirts. I mean, I took a lot away from the guy just in terms of, I mean, well, I won't speak for him, but for myself, I mean, it's like you bring a lot of yourself to bear to these characters, and unfortunately, I had to tap into kind of the worst parts of myself in some ways to play this guy and dredge them to the surface for all the world to see, and generally for their amusement. So his whole journey of self-love and the lovely ending they gave him on the show, in terms of finally learning the lessons he needed to learn was great, but. Truly, and because it was so unexpected, but getting that crystal meth storyline at the time we did it on the show, and in the history of what was going on in the society at that time, and how it was on its rise, the fact that we did it as right as we did, and we went the extra mile with it. The number of people who, beyond everything else the show has done, have thanked me for. Or thanked us, the whole show, for portraying that in the way we did, that it helped them recognize what they themselves were going through or what a friend was going through, and that it helped stop or prevent someone from going as far down the road as the character did on the show. That and that keeps going on. So kind of the pride, again, just those reminders of like the impact something like this can have, and then also just as we've been talking about earlier, just how the show politicized me and gave me a microphone, like Randy said, and I think Robert said as well, and all that stuff. I mean, these are the gifts that we still have from the show all the time. I mean, that's carried on to this day, and that's honor. It's an absolute honor, and so it continues to give me stuff this many years later.
Wonderful. Robert, how about yours?
It's funny. It's all washing over me, and I'm honestly,
it's a lot.
I'm feeling such a sense of gratitude for getting to be a part of this show and to play that role. It's like, holy smoke. I realized it just was the fulfillment of dreams. And one, in all of the stuff that Ben had to walk through, just in terms of finding his strength and courage, in times of rejection, times of being in the hospital, all these kinds of things that he was dealing with. There just something that comes to mind is there was this painting that I had that Ben had throughout the series, and this elongated painting, and in writing it said hundreds of times, "I will stand strong, I will stand strong, I will stand strong, I will stand strong," and I have that at home, and that's
wow.
That's they let me keep that, and it was that's one sort of thing that just comes to mind. But I think that the two moments that were most important to me that carry with me. One is through all the stuff with Hunter. It's always been a dream for me to be a father, and it's one of those things I'd still like to realize in my life. And there was a lot of transference in that. And there was a moment when I thought that he was leaving, and he comes back, and we hug in the hallway, and I remember how powerful that felt for me as a man who had been a boy who didn't think that those would ever be things that would be available to him.
Beautiful.
I remember thinking, I'll never be able to get married. What will I do? Will I marry a woman? Will I? I remember as a little boy, will I pretend? Will I? All those things. And so the most powerful, I think, is when we were in doing the marriage scene and realizing that I was actually saying I do in this wedding. Looking across and having that, just the whole and all the proposal of it, all the events surrounding, but it was like a realization of a dream through story. But it was an incredible blessing to do this show.
Mm-hmm.
You are all so amazing, and I want to thank you all for not only being such wonderful people in my life that I love, and now you too, Randy, but also for changing the world and being so open to fans. And we're going to see everybody at the in June at the Rise and Shine USA Con. and I will be there moderating. So keep sending me your questions because I love that.
We're excited to see you guys.
So
we have the best fans ever.
And Gail will show up for that one.
What I would love is for each of you to come back and see me by yourselves, so we can have some time before that, and then we'll do this again.
And we'll give away
together.
some free tickets.
That'd be great.
Yeah, and we'll do some free tickets, and we will give away. And then we'll get you all back right before the con, and we'll do it right beforehand. Maybe Randy, even once you're in LA, and we'll do it all in studio. It'd be fun.
Oh, that'd be fun.
Really quick, everybody.
I should be in town before the convention at some point.
Really quick, Randy, you first. Where can people find you online?
I have a Twitter account, which I never thought I'd ever say.
Nice.
Which is Randy Harrison 01. I think that's the easiest way. That's the way I get in touch with fans and let them know what I'm up to and what
Fantastic.
I'm doing.
Michelle, where can people find you?
I think my Facebook page overfloweth, and so I'd say Twitter.
Twitter? Do it, people. Robert?
You didn't hear at Robert J. Gant.
You didn't register rapesex.com?
I love hearing from folks.
Scott Lowell.
We're going to get it. Yeah, .org, because it really is a movement.
Rapesex.org.
I'm going to get you.
And I'm trying to get better about responding, guys. I'm working on that. Scott's
where
really
can
good
people
at
find you? Scott?
You can find me on my my Facebooky fan page kind of thing, and on the Twitter at Scolo is my
wonderful
my handle there.
Thank you all so much, Randy. Welcome to the show, and thank you for being here.
Thank you.
We'll have you on again
so
soon to talk about everything that you're doing. And all of you, thank you for being here.
And we hope to see you guys.
Yes. Want more information about these wonderful people, this fantastic show, and this upcoming convention, you can also go to SheenaMetalExperience.com or LATalkRadio.com. Send me an email, and I will gladly forward those links over to you. It's the Sheena Metal Experience on LA Talk Radio, and you know what we do here, people. Every Monday through Friday, 5 to 7 p.m. Pacific Time, we rip the veil off the human sideshow and expose the creatures I like to call big old Homo sapiens at their most bizarre and always at their most beautiful. And it's true every day on the show. It may be my show. It is the Sheena Metal Experience, after all. That doesn't mean it's not always and forever, undoubtedly and indubitably, and you know what I'm going to say, people. Maybe my show, but it's most definitely your experience. Thanks for listening. Have a great night. Have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you all on Monday right here on LA Talk Radio.
You found the #1 internet site for irreverent, cool, and entertaining talk programming. It's LA Talk Radio. We say what we want.